Okay. Yes. Hello, everyone. Uh, Apology for the short delay in starting our session. We had to give a bit time to the participant to register, who registered to join the platform. I hope you are all keeping safe. I'm Ekamiri Tsafak from the Making Finance Work for Africa Secretariat. It is indeed my pleasure welcoming you to this webinar we are co-hosting with the IPC-ICD Horus Consortium under the EIB Technical Assistance Program for the Financial Sector in West Africa, West and Central Africa. The theme of this webinar, how blockchain can transform Africa financial digitization and benefit SME, is quite revealing of the deep and transformational changes the digital revolution is driving on the continent, which will have certainly lasting impact on our economy and society. We all know that distributed ledger technology and blockchain in particular have potential of transforming the functioning of a wide range of public and private sector activity. Blockchain is increasingly perceived to be the driver of financial inclusions in Africa, and it also carries the potential of facilitating trade finance by eliminating paper-based processes, minimizing fraud risk in letter of credit operation, reducing the average transaction cycle, just to name a few benefits. Moreover, countries like South Africa, Kenya, Nigeria, and Ghana have experiencing a rapid uptake in cryptocurrency as a means to access more efficient payment provided by blockchain network. Indeed, blockchain can become part of the solution to address the SME finance gap estimated at above US 420 billion Africa-wide. This webinar actually is expected to educate participants on solutions that blockchain can provide to help fostering access to finance for MSME. And I am confident that the panelists and the moderator will navigate us through the various facets of this topical issue. Before I delve into the topic of, before we delve into the topic of today, let me share with you an overview of our sessions. Next slide, please. So this is an outline of our session. We will then start with the practical informations, then one slide on making finance and the program of EIB program for technical assistance in the regions. Then we introduce the panelists and move to the presentation. And finally, we'll have a Q&A session. Next slide. For the practical informations, this session is scheduled to last for about 75 minutes, including Q&A. And for a good comfort of participants, we will have all the microphones disabled during the session. Q&A session will be, we encourage you to submit your questions through the Q&A box. Be also aware that the simultaneous translation is made available from English to French and vice versa. And when you select a channel, please make sure that you have also disabled the original channel to have a good comfort of hearing. The slide and the recordings of this presentation will be circulated to the registered participant after 72 hours, so 3-day maximum, and be also available on our website of Making Finance Work for Africa. If you encounter any challenges in connecting to the platform, please send your questions, send a message to the organizer, and we will help you to sort out the issue. Do not forget at the end of the sessions to fill in the questionnaire that will pop up in your browser. We really value your feedback, as that helps us really to improve the organization of future webinars. Next slide. On Making Finance Work for Africa, I will just say quickly that it's an initiative, multi-donor initiative hosted by the African Development Bank. So Secretariat is with the bank, AFDB, provide a platform for the harmonization and facilitation of financial sector development. We really provide a number of, we have a number of tools that are really promoting, working to advocacy, networking, and policy dialogue. We also do a bit of project brokerage. Our objective is actually to unleash the potential of the financial sector in Africa in order to boost economic development and support reduction of poverty. It's aligned with the SDG objective. And to deliver this our program, we actually benefit from contribution of a number of donors that we are really grateful for their contributions. This is an already named the African Development Bank, but you also have alongside Flexim Bank, Agence Française de Développement, and the European Investment Bank. Next slide. For the EIB Technical Assistance Program, it is a nearly 3-year-old program that was established by the EIB really to support the bank and microfinance institutions that have a strong focus on supporting SME finance. The objective is to improve responsible financial inclusions by creating access to services for MSMEs, as we said, through loans and TA. The program is actually, as I said, supported by the EIB, and it benefits from the funding of the European Commissions. On that, I will pass on the floor to Mr. Bernard Kwasi, who here represents the IPC, but also the EIB. Bernard is the deputy head of the TA program, and he will give his introductory remark. Bernard, you have the floor. You are on mute, Bernard. Activate your microphone.
The European Investment Bank. I'm very pleased to welcome you all today. This is the 9th webinar of very successful ones. The topic of the day, as you stated, is how blockchain transforms financial digitalization. I am deputy team leader of the EIB Technical Assistance Program, EIB Financial Sector Ocean. Within the context of this program, IPC, Horus and IECD Consortium, in collaboration with Making Finance Work for Africa, are hosting a set of webinars for institutions operating in West and Central African region. EIB support the provision of financial services to micro and small businesses in line with microfinance requirements. Help financial institutions to deliver financial services on a credit-worthy basis. Managing the loan portfolio and being present future for me. So today, I believe that the blockchain technology offers to the challenges that are surrounding SMEs, financing, especially through the and many other issues and problems. Digitalization blockchain is on the way to really transform the full digitalization and such as the digital, improving the digitalization process and to enhance the service delivery with the specific products and services. So today, at the end of the webinar, we hope to enhance the awareness and basic knowledge of the solution blockchain provides to the African institutions, how blockchain can solve many challenges in Africa payment space, how the initial capital, what the initial capital cost of systems are, and understanding the legal framework enabling blockchain technology. Thank you very much for your attention, and I hope you enjoy it today.
Thank you, Bernard. Apology for the participant for the quality of the network. You know, we are talking technology, but you never trust the technology 100%. But I think you could capture at least the essence of what Bernard has to say around this topic. I will not summarize because we will get into the subject much deeper as we move into the substance of the meeting. I will now introduce our moderator of today, Mrs. Nishika Bajad, who is actually the deputy editor of the platform. It's called platformafrica.com. Nishita is actually based in Singapore, so you could imagine that it's already evening there. But she really volunteered to stay with to participate in this session. Nishita is bringing more than 10-year experience in the fintech and financial service industry, and also in the communication space. She started as an associate vice president at HSBC India before going on to join the business editorial team at Hindustan Time. She has served as editor of the financial news website African Money and the marketing content editor journalist at the fund manager Growfin before joining Platform Africa. She won the title of LinkedIn Top Voice 2018 for the philanthropy and global development and is currently a recognized creator on LinkedIn, having authored numerous thought leadership on publication on fintech and financial service for SME. I actually read one of his recent publications on LinkedIn. No, it's an expert that we have today on this topic. I'm sure that we will have a very enlightening conversations. Also enrich with the presentation from the panelists. I will not introduce the panelists. This is the role of the moderator. Now I will turn the floor to Nishita for the next hour, and we will follow you. You have the floor, Nishita.
Thank you. Thanks for the kind introduction. Before the speakers delve deeper into how the blockchain can help SMEs in Africa, I would like to set the context in terms of why digitization is so crucial for African SMEs and what exactly is the blockchain. Significantly, SMEs make up 60% of the employment in the continent and contribute as much as 40% of its GDP. It is evident that SMEs are a vital driver of economic and social change in Africa. However, even after COVID, less than half of all African SMEs are using any form of digital banking. This appears counterintuitive, as over 70% of global SMEs use such services. At the same time, it is clear that Africa is ready for a digital transformation and that this transformation will be powered by its SMEs. Deloitte's Africa report showed that Africa's startup ecosystem is a key catalyst and engine for driving innovation and development across the continent. At Platform Africa, the Pan-African news agency where I work, we conducted our own survey of Africa's 10 most influential startups in 2020. While we did a roundup of all key sectors such as financial services, technology, agriculture, human resources, education, and healthcare, interestingly, at least 40% of the startups hailed from fintech. So while on one hand, SMEs appear to be slow to take up digital banking, fintech is booming and the continent is thriving on the back of unique innovations such as mobile money. Is the continent trying to tell us something? Is Africa ready to leapfrog traditional technology such as digital banking and to embrace emerging technologies such as the blockchain? And what is this exciting technology that all of us keep hearing about, especially so in the context of Bitcoin, and so much so that the technology stands at risk of being overshadowed by its application? In its simplest form, blockchain is a decentralized database. As opposed to having databases in centralized servers, blockchain allows for data to be stored across a global network of computers. Consequently, no single entity, computer, or administrator has control over the databases. Essentially, blockchain is a distributed ledger in which information is stored across a network of computers instead of a central server. Hence, the transactions recorded on a blockchain are transparent, irreversible, and distributed across multiple nodes, making them secure and tamper-proof. Hearteningly, Africa is making major strides in adopting this exciting technology. A report published just this June shows that blockchain startups in Africa raised USD 91 million in the first quarter of 2022, a staggering 1,668% increase over the corresponding quarter in 2021. Of the money raised, fintech businesses accounted for 53% of all blockchain funding and exchanges for 26%. Most significantly, several tech unicorns have introduced blockchain into their businesses, including Nigerian digital payments firm InterSwitch and Senegalese fintech company Wave. As far back as 2016, Wave collaborated with UK banking major Barclays to conduct a live blockchain-based trade finance deal, a global first. The letter of credit for exporting dairy products to Seychelles from Ireland took merely 4 hours, from the paper-heavy process before that would take 7 to 10 days. This is just the tip of the iceberg and shows the immense potential that blockchain holds to facilitate SME trade, reduce processing times, and cut costs. I would now like to take the opportunity to introduce the panel members. Next slide, please. Our first speaker of the day is Blaise Bayou. Blaise is a serial tech entrepreneur who currently serves as the CEO of Yensesa. The Ghana-based Web3-focused infrastructure and investment company deploys blockchain nodes in Africa, as well as invests in projects through IDOs and staking tokens. Blaise is also a policy lead in technology for development at the Tony Blair Institute for Global Change, where he provides thought leadership on inclusive and responsive technology policies. Today, Blaise will elaborate upon the solutions that blockchain can provide to African financial institutions and how it can help promote financial inclusion. Our second speaker of the day is Jaman Miete. Jaman is head of product in new markets at Hashdex, a global crypto asset management company, where he leads new product initiatives and supports the firm's global expansion efforts. He has over 10 years of experience in financial markets, asset management, and fintech. Today, Jaman will tell us more about how the blockchain is digitizing and disrupting financial services with innovations such as central bank digital currencies, stable coins, initial coin offerings, and DeFi lending. Our final speaker of the day is Jamelino Akubeto, a digital financial services and payment system specialist. Jamelino is West Africa Director for Payments Infrastructure Specialist, Africa NENDA, where he mainly focuses on building a strong pipeline of payment projects and increasing the level of effort and investments towards inclusive payment systems. Today, Jamelino will tell us about how the blockchain is proving a game changer in the African payment systems landscape and the benefits that it brings to SMEs. I would now like to hand over to Blaise to tell us more about how financial institutions in Africa can leverage the blockchain and promote financial inclusion in the process. Over to you, Blaise. Thank you.
Sorry, I was muted. Thank you, Nishika, for the introduction, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. I'll kickstart this session by looking at blockchain technology and the solutions that it provides for financial institutions aimed at bringing the SME on board into the financial ecosystem. Next. Next slide. So the blockchain technology has come to stay, as the previous speakers have said, and is having a very impactful influence within traditional economies, more especially the finance sector. But key amongst them is the introduction of central bank digital currencies across Africa and other global economies in Europe, for instance. And also the development of blockchain sandboxes by most governments is a wake-up call to the financial sector to prepare and be ready for this evolution. But to SMEs, blockchain technology helps them to generate new revenues in unimaginable ways. And they also bring on board efficiency in the way they operate their businesses, and also how best they can connect with other players beyond their immediate environments. In terms of financial institutions, it improves user experience, onboarding new users easily, with better ways to validate who the user is, with a trusted way to identify who the user is and their asset ownership. Also, it reduces business risk through its tamper-proof and secure nature. And lastly, it brings about financial inclusion, creating new ways for everybody to participate, to access finance beyond their markets, to get new customers. Next. Today, I would say that the financial system is missing out on a big opportunity. Between 2020 and 2021, a whopping sum of $105 billion was processed through blockchain into Africa. Sadly, the financial institutions were not directly involved in these transactions, especially in having the user base and in getting the user profiles of these transactions that were taking place. As a result, financial institutions are missing out on clients and also business opportunities that arise out of this, and also the money that come through their ecosystem. Next. So the blockchain provides various benefits to financial institutions and SMEs, and I'll start with the technical benefits. So for financial institutions, security and transparency is a key factor. And also in assessing SMEs, financial institutions often need to have a secure way and transparent way to assess a business in terms of their credit scoring and also their business processes. Blockchain brings this security due to its distributed nature, and all assets are able to stored securely and transparently, and financial institutions are able to leverage these to determine who owns which asset and what kind of business services they can provide to them in terms of financing, and also helping them with retail payments. Then the programmability of blockchain is also a technical benefit to financial institutions. They are able to ride on very different business logic solutions that are executed based on certain contract decisions. So it shortens the time, and various smart contract logics can be programmed and executed based on how best a business performs, and they can be granted advanced loans. They can be granted some debt based on credit, based on meeting some business decisions or meeting some transaction volumes as an SME. So these are ways that blockchain makes it easier to process and program business logic for financial institutions. Related to security is the privacy and trust. And blockchain makes it easy to trust each other, and the transactions that come, whatever data, for instance, an SME presents, the financial institution, and if this is done through the blockchain, the financial institution is able to verify this easily over the blockchain and are able to trust the information that is being provided. So it reduces asymmetries in financial transactions. But at the same time, there's a privacy saving bit to blockchain transactions, which means that the customers or SMEs can also determine what information they give out, but are able to also control how much, each person has access to, which brings some form of trust once again to each party. And last is the high performance nature and its scalability. As it stands, most blockchains can process thousands of transactions per second, which is a good way and makes it faster for financial institutions to send payments to on behalf of, let's say, SMEs quickly. And this helps to improve supply chain flows and makes it possible for businesses to scale without incurring so much cost. Next slide. On the business side, there are some opportunities for financial institutions and SMEs, which is the governance and identity management. So within the financial system, the use of blockchain through tokenization, for instance, makes it possible for everybody to be included in the governance process. And so SMEs who are part of the financial system can have a say in decisions that are being taken and also being able to contribute to the growth of the financial system. And also it facilitates a compliance system. So through identity management and having all stakeholders to participate is a key benefit of the blockchain to the financial system. Another is the new opportunities that come with blockchain. So blockchain transcends borders, it's cross-border in nature. And so this creates new opportunities that financial institutions and SMEs can leverage to serve customers beyond their borders, reach out to investors beyond their borders. And financial institutions can also develop new investment and insurance products for customers outside their jurisdiction. So if you're in, for instance, Ghana, and you want to serve customers in Senegal, it is easy because you can have access to their crypto assets and provide them with insurance services, because you're able to lock that asset into a smart contract, and you can provide them with, let's say, a travel insurance. So these are ways that blockchain is able to open new markets and new opportunities. Next is the business process automation. Makes it easier to change and streamline your business process, making it seamless. Then that comes with the cost benefits, right? Reduction in transaction cost and infrastructure as well. So financial institutions and SMEs may not need to keep huge tech systems, but can leverage blockchain, whether private or public, to make this process easy and share the cost amongst all the stakeholders. Last is the market reactivity with the customization and with assets. There's flexibility in how best banks can react, financial institutions can react and offer, let's say, securities and issue them based on market conditions. And so this makes it easier, and banks don't run the risk of losing too much as a result of market changes, and they're able to react appropriately. Next. So some of the blockchain solutions for SMEs, the key ones, I say, and connecting that to the financial sector is the capital markets. So SMEs blockchain makes it easier to develop SME market, capital markets that, facilitate trading and exchange of assets. And also there's easy clearance and settlements of payments quicker. And the infrastructure and post-trade services are all things that can be leveraged on the blockchain. So for even commodity trading can be done on the blockchain, and there's some trust in warehousing certificates, for instance, which the financial institutions can use to finance SME farmers, can finance traders, and assure that the goods, and because the financial institutions are able to track where the goods are, this is a good way to leverage blockchain for these services. Next is the asset management, and this is very important that with blockchain, key assets are listed and tracked on the blockchain. So financial institutions can manage that easily, swap assets, either via crypto or if you're having traditional currencies or CBDCs. There's also the transfer of assets, which is easier using blockchain, and it's transparent for everybody to see. But important is yield farming, where traditional services can be brought onto the blockchain, like staking, where individuals gain by locking up their assets, support loans for that are advanced to other SMEs. So asset management is a key feature that blockchain can bring, and this is secure and transparent. Next is the retail payments, which is important. Payment cost of payments for SMEs is very high, especially in informal economies. And with the use of blockchain provides some incentives. One, financial institutions can develop SDK. SDK are software development kits that SMEs can leverage to process payments easily. But for banks themselves, new fiat and blockchain asset wallets can be developed that make it easy for institutions to transparently move around, SMEs to make payments across border, have like a blockchain wallet that can process payments in different assets across different locations. And this is good news for the system. Domestic and cross-border payments will become easy. And also KYC is getting better with blockchain over time. Once you connect that to the blockchain, then the user can cryptographically sign and approve all transactions, all KYC details that are being requested because they are being verified and placed on the blockchain. But last is, and important, is that the emergence of CBDCs and stablecoins is are solutions that are being developed, and the financial sector leverage these new solutions to enable faster payments and support SME growth in terms of retail payments. Next is the banking and lending for mortgage and financing. Today, fragmented ownership of real estate is growing, where individuals can own even an apartment within a bigger real estate company, and is being tracked and managed on the blockchain. The same for land ownership. And banks can use this information to advance loans to SMEs that want to access funding and grow. And so decentralized credit prediction and scoring is a key feature that blockchain also brings to board. So transactions that are happening on the chain are transparent and secure. Everybody has access to it. And then you can then advance loans based on the credit and the transactions that users are undertaking. Without tracking some of these things, then SMEs, for instance, become excluded if they process payments through the blockchain. And also, crypto collateralized loans is something that are solutions that can be developed out of this. Based on crypto assets, loans are advanced, and once they are returned, the crypto is released to the user using smart contracts, the programmability that I spoke about previously. So, for instance, you can use stable coins to take transactions and then lock it into a smart contract, and then you advance loans to users, which is a collateral. And a real estate financing, which I spoke about, fractional ownership, are solutions that can be developed. Last is trade finance. I think the previous speaker spoke a lot about it, but letters of credit, bills of ladings are digitized on the blockchain, and this increases the transparency, the speed of payments, and then supply chain moves faster with this process. During COVID-19, this became important, and some banks were able to leverage blockchain to ease the supply chain bottlenecks in terms of payments. Last is insurance, and insurance certificates that are issued can also be put on the blockchain, and everybody then can have access and trust to this certificate, and based on that, some services are provided to clients. The same for claims processing, so that if, let's say I have a fire disaster in my house, and this information is, digitized on the blockchain by the fire service and it's being verified, then the insurance company trusts this and they're able to offer me my claims quicker without delay. So these are some ways that blockchain makes it possible, and some of the solutions that can be developed on the blockchain for SMEs within our market. And the key building pillars of these are embedded finance. So with SDKs, for instance, SMEs themselves can build their payment solutions, riding on the SDKs provided by the financial institution. And this is a new way that, solutions that can be built and to support SME growth and inclusion. Payment SDKs are touched on that. And the last is digital identity or user verification, which KYC for short, which, with a blockchain would ease a lot of the bottlenecks. And because most SMEs do not have access to financing because of credibility, records keeping, and also identity issues, but a blockchain can remove these barriers and bring about trust and connect users to their businesses in a secure way. I think increase in financing will be achieved, and there will be more inclusion for businesses. Next. So the last, we'll look at blockchain and so inclusion for SMEs. Which areas should we be looking at? As other speakers said, there's still a huge financing gap in Africa, but I think that there's going to be an expanded market for SMEs if with the adoption of blockchain into the financial system. More of them are going to participate in trade, they're able to sell more, they're able to produce more and access raw materials quicker. But then we're also going to experience new business innovations for the SMEs, for instance, and that will bring tailored solutions to their needs, because with blockchain, you have a better view of the needs of every business, and we're going to have more customization and more automation for businesses. And there's also increased profitability as they get access to more liquidity for production and also for more access to more markets, which businesses become more profitable and they'll increase their investability, right? And so more investors are encouraged to invest in these startups, especially from the global market. So we can have investment flows from the global market through crypto assets into SMEs in Africa, because there's trust in the businesses, there's trust in the data that is being provided, and there's trust in who owns the business. So if an investor wants to invest in a real estate being developed by an SME, they trust in that the SME owns the land, they own the business, and the business is more credible and well registered. So all this information, if they are digitized on the blockchain, increases profitability for SMEs, and then they become more included and attract more capital. In summary, that's the end of my presentation next, and happy to take more questions after.
Thanks, Blaise. That was a great presentation and really allows us to understand how formal financial institutions can leverage blockchain and in the process improve financial inclusion on the continent, as well as access business benefits and technical benefits for themselves as well. So I'll plunge straight into the questions because we already have 4 questions that pertain to your part of the presentation. The first one is by Jan, who's asking, how does it facilitate identity management?
Right. So I spoke briefly about that, but let me go into detail. So identity management on the blockchain is usually done through, you connect the users, either if it's a national ID or you verify the user with their ID. Once the user is verified, you then write that to a smart contract and link that to a user wallet. So let's say if you use a user's national ID, which you're able to verify that that's the user's ID through different identification means, you write that onto the blockchain. And now this is permanent on the chain. The user has a unique token, which is linked to their identity. So let's say there's an identity wallet that is developed in the process. Now, going forward, anytime there's going to be any transaction, you send a request to the user's wallet, like the way you get on your bank when there's a transaction. Bank A wants to have access to your date of birth because this is already digitized and secured on the blockchain in an anonymous way, but only the user can verify. Then the user would use the identity to say, approve this transaction and sign with their private key. This is technical, but with their, let's say, username and password, which is similar to private key and public key on the blockchain. So if you verify with a private key, then the app is able to authenticate and return your date of birth or your company registration number to the financial institution easily. So it makes it easy to link whoever the user is to a public database, and then the verification then happens easily. So there are various identity organizations that have developed protocols in identifying different biometric details and ID systems. So some blockchain solutions even allow you to take your ID, connect it to like the blockchain, and this is then verified and cryptographically it is stored on the blockchain, and that becomes a permanent identity wallet. But anytime anybody wants to then connect with it, your wallet, you get a prompt on your wallet to approve the transactions or not. So these are ways that it helps in identity management. And the same for businesses. Whatever business details that you have, you store that on the blockchain as well. And so, and you can connect all those details then to your user identity. You can connect your business number, your land ownership, every other thing to that unique ID. And so if any person wants to request information, you have to then sign it with a crypto wallet, either using your, now most phones come with, a way to sign transactions with your fingerprint, for instance. So you then need to use your fingerprint to sign and approve for the wallet to return the requested details to the financial institution or to whichever third party it is.
Thanks so much, Blaise. That makes it really clear around identity management for individuals as well as SMEs. Then we have 2 questions from Paul around, first is central bank digital currencies. He asks, are you aware of any central banks on the continent who have given the green light for use of CBDCs other than the Central African Republic? He's asking this question to get a sense of how soon we can expect blockchain to be adopted on the continent.
Yes, sorry. So what I know is, apart from Central African Republic, Ghana, for instance, has made headway with the CBDCs, and there's ongoing discussion. So no country has officially passed it, but it's just announcements have been made and is being developed. So we're having various engagements, and the government of Ghana, for instance, keeps updating the public on the steps being taken and how soon this is going to be adopted. But I would say maybe within the next 1 year, we might see one African country, adopting CBDCs and making it an official payment medium. But I would say Ghana, which I'm very much familiar with, is making a headway. Same for Nigeria as well. So no official, adoption yet. But what this shows is that the governments are open to it, and they also are open to blockchain solutions. And also the sandboxes is something that I also see as a good news, because they want to see what innovations can be developed on top of the CBDCs. And so these two complementary developments within the CBDC ecosystem in Africa, I think is welcome. But to answer your question directly, there's no official adoption apart from CAR, but Central African Republic. But I think within the next 1 year, we should see some positive developments.
Thanks so much, Blaise. Then the next question by Paul is around whether banks and insurance companies on the continent have already started using blockchain technology. And if so, could you shed light as to which jurisdictions these are?
I think Sierra Leone have used, this is not with financial institutions, but I don't know directly of any financial institution across Africa. But what I know of is in other sectors. And so Sierra Leone, for instance, is using blockchain in its education sector. And they're also thinking of expanding that to other sectors. We've also seen governments adopt blockchain in other sectors like health, for instance. But within the financial sector, I currently don't know of any financial institution that is using that directly. But most of them are, exploring it. But my conversation with most financial institutions is that they're waiting for the CBDCs, because then once governments launch that, there's some admission on the importance of blockchain and how best they can use it for financial transactions.
Thanks, Blaise. Now, in the interest of time, and considering that quite a few questions are around CBDCs themselves, we'll move on to Draman now, who will tell us more about how the blockchain is digitizing and disrupting financial services with innovations such as central bank digital currencies, stable coins, initial coin offerings, and DeFi lending. Over to you, Draman.
Thank you, Nishika, and thanks to Blaise for laying the framework for this. So I'll usually think about this more. I'll come at it from the perspective of how will blockchain disrupt the way your financial services company are servicing your client, or what are some of the ways in which they get to your client before you do? Because at the end of the day, I think that's what matters, right? Whenever I talk about this, people usually ask, what would happen to the financial institution if all of this were to come true? And I usually say, I don't know, but the truth of the matter is no one is going to ask your permission to disrupt you as a business. So it's upon yourself to readjust your business model and be able to function in a digital and a blockchain-centric world, which is where we are going. Next slide, please. So what I will touch on today is really the use cases of blockchain around payment, banking, and central banking at first. And then the second point would be around how blockchain is changing capital market with tokenization and ICOs. And lastly, we'll talk about decentralized finance, which is the way in which folks in the crypto and blockchain community talk about the new ways in which they are inventing the same services provided by traditional finance companies in a blockchain first way, essentially. And I think before we get into all of this, a little bit of perspective taking. I think right now, a lot of the conversation around blockchain is essentially around Bitcoin and price action and all that, right? But if you think about it, there's about only 300 or so million active users of blockchain or crypto today. That's about the same number of people that were using internet in 1999, 2000, right? And now think about it. In 1999, in the internet world, there was no Google, no Facebook, no Amazon, no Uber, right? Like none of the killer apps that we actually know internet for. So I want to propose to you that it's very early and you shouldn't form a definitive opinion, especially a negative one, of this technology when it's so early. If you just join the parallel with what internet was, because the internet of 2022 is so much more different, deep, and better than what it was in 1999. Next slide, please. So the first use case that I want to touch on is around payment. And as Bled alluded to, CBDC is a massive discussion point. I think almost everywhere. There's probably close to 100 central banks that are either implementing it or working on pilot or exploring it. So it's really an important topic. And there's like two things that makes it very interesting, I think, for me, right? So number one, if you are in a digital first world, as a central bank, you need a way to exist, right? Because it's either you provide the CBDC as an option, or you're essentially deciding that only private option will prevail in the payment space. And as a country, as a central bank, you have to be comfortable with that. So there's a cost for not engaging with the CBDC option. Having said that, there's two features about CBDC that are very interesting. It's the programmability that Bless touched on. And this, when people talk about blockchain, they often talk about programmable money, right? It's money used to be not programmable. You have it, you can spend it, you can keep it, you can do very few things with it. But with blockchain, you can essentially write code on your money and make it do very complex stuff, which is really powerful. You think about as a business. Imagine if I could be like, listen, whenever I receive money in euro, convert it to USD or convert it to my local currency so that I don't even have to run any FX risk. That's something that you can do because money is programmable. Or you can say, if the balance of my account reach 50,000, start repaying all the outstanding loan that I have because I don't want to incur any interest expense on this. So that's how powerful it is to have programmable money. And this is a new concept that we have consumed Bitcoin. And the second one is the idea of peer-to-peer exchanges without going through an intermediary, which is I can send you value, you can send me value, and you don't have to go through someone else. And that's really powerful in that it's this intermediate, all the folks that were usually involved. So that's why CBDC and at large, blockchain for payment is powerful and important. And why do people usually care about it? For the central bank standpoint, is because they want to stay relevant, number one. And also number two is because CBDCs could be more efficient, i.e. less costly, and they could be built to be very interoperable. Because for all the good things that we have to say about mobile money, in most of our countries, they are not really interoperable among themselves and sometimes with the banking sector as well. So a CBDC could be interoperable. And this point about financial inclusion, which I believe is like very important to a crowd like this, right? At the end of the day, I think, I take the example of my own country, Cote d'Ivoire, banking penetration is maybe 17, 18% at best. If with mobile money, you maybe reach 30%. So there's so much more to be done in terms of financial inclusion. So these are some of the reasons why a central bank or a country might be tempted to go the CBDC way. And when it comes to CBDC, the part that could be very interesting is the retail CBDC, which would essentially mean that the central bank is giving to the people in the country almost, in a very stylized manner, an account with the central bank. So everybody can have an account with the central bank, either directly or through a third party. And what that does is it provides a superior payment experience, which is cheaper and faster. Number two, it's actually disintermediated the banks and the financial institution because it's providing a service that banks were doing before. And number three, which is probably more interesting for the repercussion is could be an open architecture. And if it's open, it's easy for almost everyone else to sort of build on top of that. And there's like much more room for innovation in that setup. Next slide, please. Cool. So CBDC is almost, it's the public option, public, play that could happen in this space. There's like a private play that could happen. And stablecoin is one of those, right? Stablecoin is meant to be a crypto asset whose value is pegged to a fiat currency. So you could have a USD stablecoin, which is supposed to be 100% backed by deposit or, high quality and liquid asset in US dollar, right? And essentially, once you have, it's almost like mobile money, the way mobile money will work, right? So a provider offers you the digital equivalent of a currency. The beauty with it is it's instantaneously transferable 24/7, 365 days across the globe. So if I have, let's say, if I take the example of Tether, I have a Tether account, I have USDT on it, I can send it to my brother who's in France, who can send it back to his sister who's in Canada. And this is done in a second. And this is really powerful. And number two, it can also be, it's open and programmable. So you can add more and more layers of utility on top of adding the money in itself. And it can also be built in regulatory friendly way as well. So it need not to be built like in a crypto native and not compliant way. So the stablecoin has massive disruption potential. I think we've seen it firsthand when Facebook tried to launch Libra. And I think most of the banks, most of the global banks, most of the regulators were really worried because they saw how powerful and how game-changing that could be, but also what are the risks that would have come with having Facebook play such a critical role in the setup. And over and beyond the stablecoin, there's all the new experiences that a lot of blockchain companies are creating for international payments. So you've seen MoneyGram work with Stellar to enable crypto to cash services. And more interestingly, a very interesting data point, it's almost in the US, there's almost 25% of the people doing cross-border remittances that have used crypto to do so. And I think that's a very interesting statistic when you think about how much remittance means for us on the African continent. So the payment use cases for blockchain are maturing fast. I think the technology maturity is actually very advanced. There's few challenges, and most of the challenges I would propose are around regulation and maybe adoption on the ground. Next slide, please. The other use case that is very interesting to talk about is around capital market. And there's like two core concepts there. One is around ICO, which is the crypto equivalent of an IPO. So essentially a way in which, if you have a project, you want to raise capital for the project, you do an ICO that enables you to raise capital. But usually, because you don't want that capital raise to be deemed a security, what you will do, you make sure that you're not making any promises in terms of return on it. And usually what you would do, you would give a certain utility to the token. So, and that could be like, if you invest in the token, maybe you can have free goodies from us, or maybe you can use the token as a discount whenever you're using the service. So that's one, like the very interesting way in which a lot of the crypto projects are being funded. And that's a very interesting way to raise money, because what you could do then, it can actually help a small business on the continent tap a global capital base, number one. And number two, because it's very much community driven, you are not only raising money, you are also building an ecosystem of stakeholders and supporters and users, the people that will use your product and give you feedback on it. And that's a very powerful example. And for me, I think about, think about the creative industry on the continent. That's like very hard to finance. But there's a lot of aficionados of like African cinema, Nollywood, and what have you. You could use ICUs as a way of financing a creative art project in a way that the traditional setup doesn't enable you to do. And the second use case that I want to talk about here is tokenization. Tokenization is just, for you finance folk, it's just securitization at the end of the day. So it's just enable you to securitize any sort of capital, any sort of asset that you have. What is very interesting with crypto is when you talk about tokenization, it's two things. It's number one, issuing the token, of course, but more interestingly, it's the workflow. So you can build a token with certain rules and mechanisms. Let's say you can restrict the people that can buy it. You can restrict even the geographies where it can be bought and sold. You can put, a time cap or a token lock and stuff like that. So there's a lot of interesting stuff that come with having, that programmability feature. And the last thing that I want to touch on in that sort of connect with inclusion is most of these can be fractional. So instead of issuing shares that cost $100, you can start trading at a fraction of even $1. So almost everybody can buy it. And next slide, please. The last bit that I want to touch on is really around lending. So, DeFi was one of the killer use cases in crypto, and it really started with, one of the cool cases was around decentralized credit and lending. So basically, I think Les alluded to it. You put crypto in collateral and you can get money against that collateral. I think that in itself was very powerful because there's like almost very few cases on the continent where as a user or as a business, I could have that liquidity so fast by putting something in collateral. But so it started in crypto lending, but it's actually moving in traditional asset now. On the next slide, please. I talk about there's like two interesting use cases that have been emerging. One is Aave, which started in the DeFi lending space, and that is currently working with certain issuers. So essentially the issuers pull together a set of assets. It could be trade receivable, it could be invoices, and they tokenize them so then they are digital assets and available online. And based on that, they come on the Aave platform and people can lend to them against this collateral. So that's really powerful, and it's really creating new ways in which, as an issuer, as a fund manager, maybe I can just create a pool of assets and finance them. And that's disruptive to what the banks do. And the second example is around Goldfinch, which is essentially building a decentralized credit platform. Basically, they onboard a lot of people, rich people, not rich people, to create a pool of money. And on the other side, what they do is they select credit managers, people that are specialists of Africa or Latin America. They lend money to those, and this credit manager would then find businesses on the ground that they would finance. So that's a new way in which they sort of helping other people, originate loan on the continent and finance them outside the traditional banking system. And I think the end goal for them is actually to build a decentralized underwriting network. Let's say you're a very good credit risk manager in the bank, and you are very confident that you can underwrite good credit. You could almost go out, start underwriting, originating this credit, and create your track record on the Goldfinch platform and get finance. And that's really powerful to the concept of providing the banking service without being a bank. And I think I'll stop here for the presentation, but I just wanted to make sure that I touch on some of these use cases that are close to the business model of the bank and the financial institution, and how the landscape is changing very fast on those.
Thank you, Draman. It really helps us to know how the blockchain can be useful in remittances in particular, which you mentioned are powering the continent, and it is an important aspect. Even in terms of raising capital, when you mention ICOs, it revolutionizes the landscape for SMEs. Now, we have a related question from Bahati on this topic, that SMEs cannot access bank credit because of lack of collateral and information asymmetry. Practically, how can we bring financial institutions and SMEs to be connected to one blockchain to address these two challenges?
That's a great question. And I think, there's many ways you can look at it. So number one, let's say if there was like a CBDC in your country, and by having a CBDC, you are giving almost everybody in the country a digital native manner way of paying for stuff, right? So by design, you would have like more payment information about the SME that is available. And that payment information is not only available, but it's also, it's true data that is not false. And that essentially make it easier for banks or microfinance to underwrite this business better, because they know it better, they can track the flows. And that is, I think that is really powerful when it comes to, if you digitize part of the process, you're reducing the risk of originating credit for this business. So I think that's the one thing that comes to mind on that front. So the more digitized the setup is, the easier it becomes for folks to on-lend to that company down the line. And what blockchain enabled you is, I think people call it, triple entry accounting, right? So we all used to double entry accounting, but if you have a blockchain that mediates the transaction, so there's an additional trace of the transaction that is on the blockchain, and that is available to everybody. So that better information about the SME is not just available to the bank, but it's also available to all the set of providers. So there are people that might not even be banks, but that could get comfortable with lending to you because they know they have more information about you than they could have had in the previous in the previous organization of the world where there was not as much information. So that's one way I'll look at it.
Great, thanks, Raman. We also have another question by Peter, who asks that the COVID-19 pandemic has seen digitalization providing new opportunities for international trade and expanding the market for companies, including SMEs, through e-commerce. However, such developments interact with the policy, regulatory, and administrative environment for trade, which can be highly complex and slow to adapt. And here the benefits of digitization are not evident. What are some of the African best practices in promotion of digital ecosystems and e-commerce leveraging on blockchain by policymakers? How do we visualize the interdependence between intra-African trade, e-commerce, and the ultimate goal of having an integrated digital economy?
I mean, I think that's a very vast question. That's a lot on the policymaking side of it. But I think the promise, let's say if we want to make payment very efficient on the continent, because we all know that, it costs way too much to transfer money on the continent. If it costs 2 or 3%, that's 2 or 3% that is gone for the SMEs. And we know how critical the service that they provide is. So if the whole of us on the African continent, the central bank and whatnot, we decided to build an African blockchain that would facilitate the payment among ourselves. That number one, that setup could work very well at the country level. So make it easier for people to pay for stuff and have a digital identity that could be used for them to underwrite, to have the credit underwritten. Or number two, could also be used to facilitate payment between countries, because almost all the countries, all the central banks are using the same ledger. It becomes very easy to move money from one country to the other because you're moving, it's almost your central bank is moving money from its account to the receiver's central bank account. I think all of that is, in terms of efficiency and in terms of data availability, there's a lot of things to be done around that. And of course, with that technology, it's become easier for for people to go around some of the capital control regulation. And I think there's a lot of folks that can now accept stablecoin. And you can have a USD stable coin, which is like a digital equivalent of the dollar, and maybe that is not allowed in the country. So there's that. But again, it's a policy issue, but it's also about how do we build bridges between you receiving a USD stable coin and bringing that back in the country, because you are not receiving it as a result of illicit activity. You're actually selling goods and services, and maybe your client want to pay you in US dollar, right? So that's one angle I'll think about, but that's more from the commercial side. I think there's a lot of policy making consideration to sort of think about in this case.
Thanks for that, Raman. Now we'll move on to Jamelino, who will tell us more about blockchain proving a game changer in the African payment systems landscape and the benefits that it brings to SMEs. Thank you.
Thank you, Nishika. So let me start by thanking microfinance for Africa and European Investment Bank teams for the invitation. I will share my perspective from the payment angle. I know we are running late. I promise I will be brief. And now let me switch to French, and I would advise English-speaking audience to choose the English channel. So, next slide. Alors, donc, donc comme je le disais, mon focus va être par rapport à la perspective qu'on voit de l'utilisation de la blockchain par rapport au paiement. Donc, je ferai un peu l'état des lieux des systèmes de paiement, où est-ce qu'on en est en termes de systèmes de paiement en Afrique. Après, je parlerai un peu des problématiques. Donc, quelles sont les problématiques relatives au paiement? Et donc, comment ces problématiques, d'une façon ou d'une autre, justifient aujourd'hui l'utilisation de la blockchain dans le cadre des paiements numériques? Et puis après, je parlerai un peu de ce que cela apporte aux PME, qu'est-ce que la blockchain apporte aux PME, puis je finirai par parler un peu de comment on peut voir le futur pour la blockchain dans l'écosystème du paiement en Afrique. Next slide. Alors, vous voyez, ici, nous avons un peu on est venu de très loin. On est venu de très loin. Pour faire quand je parle de paiement ici, je précise que je fais référence à tout ce qui est paiement direct d'un bien ou d'un service, mais je fais aussi référence à tout ce qui est transfert d'argent. Donc, on est venu d'un contexte où, pour effectuer des transactions, il fallait se déplacer, il fallait, par exemple, pour envoyer de l'argent, il fallait faire des mandats postaux. On est venu des méthodes les plus traditionnelles et nous avons remarqué ces 10, 15 dernières années, en fait, avec l'avènement du mobile money et d'un certain nombre de solutions digitales, que bon, désormais, on peut faire des paiements à travers le téléphone, on peut envoyer de l'argent à travers le téléphone, on peut faire des opérations en banque sans se déplacer. Et demain, nous sommes en train de tendre, dès maintenant, en fait, nous sommes en train de voir une révolution aujourd'hui où, on peut utiliser les crypto-monnaies, notamment le Bitcoin, pour faire ces paiements. On peut faire le paiement en ligne à partir justement en utilisant bien sûr sur la base de la technologie blockchain. Donc, on est vraiment aujourd'hui ancré dans une stratégie disruptive en matière de paiement. Next slide. Alors, il faut qu'on regarde un peu quelle est la situation. On a fait un bon progrès, on va dire, ces 4-5 dernières années. Et là, vous voyez un peu la situation qu'on avait au niveau du monde entier en termes de paiement, de mise en place des systèmes de paiement en 2018. Et donc, en 2018, vous voyez un peu en rouge, vous avez juste les systèmes de paiement qui étaient déjà déployés et qui étaient opérationnels. Après, vous avez tout ce qui était déjà soit en train d'être implémenté où on est en train les différents parties prenantes sont en train de réfléchir par rapport à la mise en place. Alors, quand vous regardez un peu en Afrique, vous voyez en fait qu'on a quoi? On a le Nigeria, dont le système NIVS est déjà opérationnel. On a le Kenya, qui a son système, le PESA-Link, et l'Afrique du Sud, qui étaient les seuls pays en Afrique où il y avait réellement un système de paiement opérationnel. Next slide. Alors, on a fait du chemin. Là, on est en 2022. Et quand vous regardez en 2022, vous voyez tout ce qui est en marron, on va dire marron clair, c'est les systèmes qui ont pu être déployés et implémentés depuis 2017, en tout cas en 2017 et 2021. Et vous voyez en fait que finalement, quand on regarde, tout le mapping est presque coloré, peut-être pas en Afrique, mais même en Afrique, quand on regarde, on voit quand même qu'on a des pays tels que le Ghana, le Nigeria, le Kenya, où on a des systèmes, et même l'Afrique du Sud, où on a des systèmes qui avaient été déployés ou qui sont en train d'être renforcés. Donc, clairement, aujourd'hui, on a de plus en plus de pays qui disposent d'un système de paiement. Après, quand vous regardez le reste de l'Afrique, vous voyez que toute cette partie en gris, et cela signifie en fait qu'il y a encore beaucoup de pays où il n'y a pas de système fonctionnel. Next slide. Alors, donc cela veut simplement dire qu'en fait, clairement, il y a un certain nombre de problématiques. Et il faut comprendre aujourd'hui que pourquoi la blockchain présente un intérêt en Afrique. Elle présente un intérêt parce qu'elle apporte des solutions, elle vient combler un certain nombre de cas que nous rencontrons par rapport au paiement. Et comme vous savez, on dit généralement que la nature a peur du vide. Quand vous regardez aujourd'hui, bien qu'au niveau de l'Afrique, on ait une grande adoption du mobile money, le paiement reste problématique dans plusieurs pays. Alors, les raisons sont nombreuses. Ici, j'ai mis un certain nombre de raisons. La première raison que je viens de montrer tout à l'heure, c'est simplement le fait que dans la plupart des pays, il y a une quasi-inexistence des systèmes de paiement. Donc, il n'y a pas de système de paiement, des systèmes de paiement instantanés et inclusifs qui permettent en fait de pouvoir faire des transactions en temps réel, des transactions qui sont prises en compte en temps réel. Et surtout, on n'a pas de systèmes qui sont inclusifs et qui permettent au plus grand nombre d'acteurs de pouvoir être intégrés. On verra tout à l'heure pourquoi la question d'inclusivité justifie justement la nécessité en fait de recourir à de nouvelles technologies, notamment la blockchain. Et puis le deuxième problème, c'est le modèle économique. En fait, si vous remarquez, en Afrique, les acteurs ont essayé de booster le paiement en essayant un certain nombre de schémas en termes de modèles économiques qui n'ont presque pas marché. Parce que, en fait, comment on arrive aujourd'hui à permettre que les transactions soient faites à des coûts très faibles et tout en assurant une certaine viabilité du business. Et généralement, on n'arrive pas à mettre dans la balance les deux. Et donc, vous comprenez pourquoi aujourd'hui, la plupart des paiements, enfin, quand vous regardez aujourd'hui, par rapport aux services financiers digitaux, il y a très peu de paiements. Enfin, ça représente à peu près, souvent, les marchés, à peu près 20% de moyenne. Donc, on est vraiment loin du compte et le modèle économique est l'une des raisons. Après, on a la question de la réglementation parce que quand on regarde aujourd'hui, moi, je suis basé à Abidjan, mais est-ce que je peux facilement faire des transactions avec le Nigeria? La question est non, parce que les transactions transfrontalières sont hyper régulées et parfois même non autorisées. Donc, pour pouvoir faire des échanges entre les différents pays, ce n'est simplement pas possible. Et ça, c'est un manque qui est comblé justement par des technologies nouvelles, notamment la blockchain. Et bien sûr, on peut regarder aussi les autres problématiques en termes de fraude. Comment on gère la fraude, est-ce que les paiements sont sécurisés, est-ce que les populations qui font ces transactions, est-ce que ces populations sont suffisamment préparées, quelle est la problématique d'alphabétisation numérique, est-ce que ceux qui ont des plateformes de paiement, en l'occurrence les opérateurs, est-ce qu'ils ouvrent les plateformes pour que les fintechs puissent s'agréger à ces plateformes? Il y a la problématique d'Open APIs également. Next slide. Donc, en fait, aujourd'hui, compte tenu de toutes ces problématiques, en fait, la blockchain vient apporter un peu de lumière. Et je dois vraiment rappeler qu'ici, nous sommes donc en train de profiter d'une technologie donc de stockage et de transformation d'informations. Et donc, quand je parle d'informations, donc je parle aussi des transactions, donc également des paiements en différents utilisateurs. Alors, la blockchain vient en réalité amplifier un certain nombre de choses. La première chose qu'elle vient changer, c'est la rapidité des transactions. Mais mes collègues qui étaient intervenus avant moi ont suffisamment parlé de ça. Aujourd'hui, parce qu'on a supprimé un certain nombre d'intermédiaires, vous imaginez aujourd'hui, quand je dois faire une transaction de la Côte d'Ivoire vers le Sénégal, par exemple, bien que même il y ait un système existant, cette transaction, par exemple, ça me prend banalement 48 heures, parfois plus. Pourquoi? Parce qu'il faut peut-être passer par les banques correspondantes, etc. Enfin, dans tous certains pays, mais même au niveau de la zone où nous sommes, donc de la zone UEMOA, par exemple, en fait, l'information n'est pas transmise en temps réel, même si le système existant aurait pu permettre, en fait, que la transaction soit prise en compte en temps réel. Donc, aujourd'hui, la blockchain, en éliminant les barrières, notamment celles liées aux intermédiaires, rend les transactions plus rapides et aussi sécurise les transactions parce que comme un peu mes prédécesseurs l'ont dit, le simple fait, en fait, de donner cette possibilité de pouvoir crypter les informations, cela permet, en fait, de rendre la transaction, enfin, quasiment inviolable et également, en même temps, rendre la transaction traçable. Parce que la vraie question, généralement, qu'on se pose, c'est comment on sécurise tout en rendant la transaction traçable, alors que ici, ce sont des transactions donc, qui sont publiques. Donc, on voit ces chaînes de blocs, les informations restent publiques, mais l'accès à certains types de données qui sont clés demande justement l'utilisation d'une clé privée. Et bien évidemment, le caractère particulier de la blockchain reste la décentralisation. Parce que, par nature, on ne peut pas, il n'y a pas une structure, il n'y a pas un serveur qui centralise toutes ces informations. Et cela permet en fait justement de pouvoir éliminer un certain nombre de considérations qu'on a, notamment par rapport à la réglementation dont je parlerai. Et donc, en réalité, aujourd'hui, la blockchain reste un levier important qui facilite l'utilisation des crypto-monnaies pour pouvoir effectuer les transactions de paiement et d'envoi d'argent. Next slide. Alors, quand on regarde par rapport au PME, je vais revenir sur un certain nombre d'éléments dont j'avais parlé. Donc, clairement, la question de la sécurité des transactions. Vous voyez un peu la problématique que les PME ont généralement par rapport au stockage de l'information, même par rapport à la sécurisation de leurs différentes opérations. Mais aujourd'hui, quand on regarde une PME, qu'elle soit dans le secteur de la finance, qu'elle soit dans le secteur de l'assurance, de la logistique, de la santé, de l'immobilier, il y a un certain nombre de choses, c'est que ces PME aujourd'hui peuvent utiliser cette technologie pour sécuriser les opérations, les transactions, mais aussi cela permet de supprimer les différentes contraintes. Alors, quand je parle de contraintes, on peut voir un certain nombre de contraintes, les contraintes géographiques, par exemple, parce que si, par exemple, je dois faire des transactions avec un pays extérieur, aujourd'hui, la réglementation, dans certains cas, ne le permet pas, ou parfois, je fais face à des problématiques de coût. Et donc, toutes ces problématiques de coût et parfois de temps, parce que comme je l'ai dit, expliqué tout à l'heure, même une transaction, ça vous prend 2 jours, parfois 4-5 jours. Donc, aujourd'hui, vous avez la possibilité donc, de vous baser sur la technologie blockchain pour supprimer toutes ces contraintes, qu'elles soient liées à la géographie, au temps ou au coût. Et puis, évidemment, parce qu'on a supprimé toutes les barrières, cela permet, dans certains cas, en fait, d'améliorer tout le dispositif d'approvisionnement, donc de supply chain, parce qu'en fait, cela permet de pouvoir faire un meilleur suivi, d'avoir une certaine traçabilité et de supprimer donc un certain nombre de barrières qui rendaient les processus d'acquisition beaucoup plus longs. Et effectivement, je pense que le premier, Blaise en avait parlé dans sa présentation. On parle de plus en plus des smart contracts parce que, ou les contrats intelligents, si je peux m'exprimer, qui sont des contrats en fait automatisés et qui permettent généralement de pouvoir lever un certain nombre de clauses. Quand un certain nombre de conditionnalités sont remplies, comment je peux lever? Quand je prends l'exemple simple, par exemple, d'une compagnie qui travaille avec ses clients et qui leur dit, bon, OK, si vous arrivez, par exemple, à accumuler un certain nombre de points, je peux désormais vous faire un certain nombre de réductions. Généralement, dans le processus traditionnel, il faut forcément que quelqu'un dans un département regarde contrat par contrat pour voir si ces conditions ont été remplies. Aujourd'hui, la blockchain permet simplement d'aller beaucoup plus vite et de pouvoir faire cette vérification et de pouvoir justement retrocéder, par exemple, à ses clients ce à quoi ils ont droit. Next slide. Alors, donc, je suis en train d'atterrir. Alors, donc, la question qu'on peut se poser, est-ce que définitivement, il y a un futur pour la blockchain en matière de paiement en Afrique? Alors, quand on regarde les statistiques, on peut se dire, oui, il y a une adoption qui est relativement faible. Là, quand on regarde un peu un certain nombre de statistiques, j'ai des statistiques de 2019-2020, 2% des transactions qui ont été effectuées ont été basées, par exemple, sur les crypto-monnaies. Mais quand on regarde aujourd'hui les fonds qui sont levés, notamment pour les par les startups qui sont dans le secteur, on est parti de 127 millions en 2021 de dollars, on est passé à 304 millions de dollars. Donc, on peut sentir quand même qu'il y a pas mal de perspectives d'évolution dans le secteur. Après, on peut se poser la question de savoir, OK, en termes de paiement, quelle est l'adoption réellement des crypto-monnaies, notamment dans les paiements? En fait, on peut se rendre compte que si 93%, au niveau des marchés du Nord, on a à peu près 93% d'adoption sur les marchés du Nord. Mais ici, les marchés les plus dynamiques, c'est les marchés du Kenya, de l'Afrique du Sud, du Nigeria, bien évidemment. Et puis, en fait, sur ces marchés, on est à peu près encore à 7% de la population. Cela veut dire que même si, définitivement, il y a une acceptation des paiements en crypto-monnaie, donc utilisant la technologie blockchain, il y a encore, ça reste encore timide. Et donc, on peut se poser maintenant la question de savoir, OK, mais où est-ce qu'on y va? Et je pense que c'est un peu ce que les banques centrales ont compris, ont décidé quand même, parce que par rapport, elles restent quand même très préoccupées par la question de décentralisation de la blockchain et ont décidé, en fait, de développer leur propre monnaie. Et donc, on est de plus en plus en train d'avoir… Alors, j'ai parlé d'essor, mais c'est une tendance qu'on est en train de voir, donc la tendance de développement des monnaies numériques, donc version banque centrale. Et comme vous pouvez le voir un peu sur le slide, on a des pays, enfin le Nigeria, qui aujourd'hui a développé le e-Naira, et on voit tous ces pays qui veulent lui emboîter le pas, notamment le Ghana, l'Afrique du Sud, qui sont également en train de travailler sur le lancement de leur monnaie numérique. Et après, il y aura un certain nombre de pays qui vont les suivre le pas. Alors, la vraie question qu'on doit se poser, deux questions pour finir sur cela. La première question, c'est est-ce qu'aujourd'hui, définitivement, le lancement de ces monnaies numériques version banque centrale, qu'est-ce que ça va changer fondamentalement dans l'univers du paiement? Je pense que ça va dépendre vraiment des marchés et de la phase de maturité de chaque marché. Et la deuxième question qu'on peut se poser également, est-ce qu'on pense que d'ici les 5 prochaines années, est-ce qu'on pense qu'il y aura une adoption beaucoup plus significative de la blockchain et comment ça va révolutionner le paiement. Et là, je dis encore, bien sûr qu'il y a encore, en tout cas sur la plupart des pays africains, un certain nombre de contraintes relatives à cela. Mais quand on regarde les tendances qu'on a vues ces dernières années, il y a des raisons d'espérer quand même qu'il y ait de plus en plus d'utilisateurs et que les PME également, particulièrement, puissent de plus en plus en bénéficier. Merci.
Thank you, Jamelino. I would agree with you that Africa still has a long way to go. And while CBDCs are slowly and gradually arriving on the scene with Nigeria, the Central African Republic, there is still a long way to go, even in terms of ensuring that these are adopted in the economies where they are being launched currently. So in terms...
Maybe I know that most of the questions are in French, and maybe you need assistance for translation. So I can read them and answer to. I don't know how many minutes do we have before the closing?
I would refer to Hughes for that. Hughes, how much time do we have now? Because
I don't know. So
we are almost reaching the end of the time limit that's allocated.
Yeah.
Yes, but I can see that there are still many participants connected on the platform, which really shows that they are really interested. It's better that we continue. Maybe take the questions, in particular those are in French. You can take them for the next 5 minutes before we make the last round and then conclude.
Okay. Yes, we can take the question in French, but I don't know if someone can assist Nishika on that.
Okay. Do you need my assistance, Nishita? We translated some of the questions, but easiest way could also be for the panelists to read the question. Let me, if you want me, do you want me to read the questions, Nishita?
Oh,
the one in French.
Jamelino, would you be able to take up the questions in French on the chat box?
Okay, let me do it. Let me open the chat. So the first question, there are more comments actually. So the first question I'm seeing, the pays africain refusé, mostly comments. Okay, let me take this one. La réglementation existe-t-elle déjà pour faciliter l'utilisation de la blockchain sans risque d'instabilité du système financier? Et en fait, cette question rejoint la question c'est purement une question réglementaire. Et le fait, en fait, aujourd'hui, de voir, parce qu'il faut rappeler que même les banques centrales, dans le développement des monnaies numériques, utilisent la technologie de la blockchain. Donc, en fait, définitivement, pour la Banque centrale, c'est plutôt l'utilisation des crypto-monnaies qui peut, d'une façon ou d'une autre, créer un déséquilibre au niveau du système financier. Après, ça, il y a un gros point d'interrogation dessus, et donc c'est un peu pour prendre leurs responsabilités. C'est pour prendre leurs responsabilités qu'elles ont un peu devancé en disant, OK, nous-mêmes, on va lancer nos propres monnaies, et donc nos propres monnaies qui vont prendre donc la forme, en fait, ce qu'on appelle les CBDC, donc qui sont des monnaies numériques qui vont être basées sur la même technologie et qui vont venir d'une façon ou d'une autre pallier aux éventuels risques qu'on pourrait avoir, en tout cas l'amplification de ces risques qu'on pourrait avoir au niveau des crypto-monnaies. There is another question here. This question is, I don't know, where can I get training on blockchain? I know there are too many possibilities, online courses, maybe on that. I will let Hugh and team share some more information. But basically, what I'm reading right now on here is that we are getting mostly some comment and no question. Or Nishika,
you, Jamelino. Okay, let me now move on to the other questions, one of which pertains to the supply chain, where I believe you will be able to add value, Jamelino, because you refer to that being one of the benefits that it brings in terms of supply chain tracing and certifications. So what is the role of blockchain in certifying supply chains? Example, for high value products or agriculture. Example, certification of origination such as forest honey or deforestation free cocoa, basically ethical sourcing.
Yeah. So what I say during in my presentation is that blockchain can bring value in terms of supply chain management. So the question here, what I'm saying is that how this blockchain can improve the supply chain of microfinance institutions with specific financial products and services for agricultural value chains. I think here is more about the possibility we can give microfinance to get connected to the agricultural ecosystem, and based on that, they can, because one of the key constraints microfinance can face in terms of agricultural value chain is about traceability. So they can trace, they can track all the transactions that have been made, and based on that, they can know exactly, they can try to work to reduce the time, because I think another constant they are facing is more mostly about the team. So I think in terms of benefit we can expect from blockchain is more in terms of traceability, but also in terms of time reduction.
Thanks, Jamelino. So you've addressed the question on supply chain traceability, as well as how the blockchain can give investors the assurance that products are ethically sourced before they even commit capital to SMEs. Okay. Moving on to other questions. Peter has asked that, will you suggest that there be more funding on education and awareness in a form of specific digital skills by SME executives and policymakers? So,
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, would you like to take that question?
Oh, yes, I think that is a critical one, because one of what I said is that yes, there is still a challenge in terms of digital education in Africa, and mostly within the SMEs ecosystem. So I think that if we want to get them to help them get prepared to benefit from the blockchain technology, yet we can explore the possibility to invest in training for SMEs. I know there are some organizations that are already involved in this kind of capacity building activities for SMEs, but we can happy to share more information on that.
Thank you, Jamelino. So we also have some questions which center around CBDCs now, and they pertain to how we see future collaboration between CBDCs and crypto. So would you like to address that one as well?
I can start and maybe hand over to other panelists to share their perspective on that.
Spoke about CBDCs as well, so he would like to take it up from you.
Exactly. Because one thing I also said during my presentation was that I think central banks are realizing that the character of, how can I say, the aspect of decentralization of cryptocurrency is a big concern for central bank. That's why they are preparing to launch the CBDC. But when you compare, CBDC is not really a cryptocurrency. The two, I would say the two currencies are focused on the same technology, which is the blockchain. By the vision of central bank is just to keep controlling CBDC instead of, and it is not the case for other cryptocurrencies. So I think there are some similarities, but in terms of use case, there will be some differences. But let me hand over to, I don't know, Blaise, maybe to add on that.
I can chime in just quickly. I think, it's a new space. It's being developed. So most of what we say will be conjecture, right? But I think Jamelino said it well in his presentation that central banks are trying to sort of get in the game of, providing almost like an anchor point by doing the CBDC bit, which is like a very exciting and encouraging environment. What it says is there's some good thing about the technology, and that's why they're trying to do CBDC. But not all the use cases are the same. So CBDC is on the payment side, it's like plain vanilla. It's almost like, think about it as mobile money in steroid, right? But the other use case that when it's come to maybe investing in Bitcoin or Ethereum, they could be regulated as financial asset depending on the country. So there's so under the same crypto umbrella, you might have like different asset classes and different treatment, and each of them might be regulated differently. And the interaction between CBDC of them, I think, will just depend on how the central bank will sort of classify them. But at the end of the day, the good thing about having a CBDC is just it will make it easier for people to pay or to leave their digital assets, digital life. So if you have CBDC and it's allowed for you to invest in Bitcoin and Ethereum, it becomes very easy for you to do that. Then you don't have to use maybe a stable coin, which is issued by a private entity, and that those tend to be riskier than using central bank issued money. So I think for me, that's it. So the CBDC might just help create almost like a walled garden where it's easy. Once you have the CBDC, it's easy to interact with the crypto project that are allowed in your country. And if you want to do anything which is funny and that is not allowed, you cannot use the central bank CBDC to do that.
Thanks, Raman. I'd agree with you and Jamelino that CBDCs represent a way of, again, centralizing control, and cryptocurrencies are exactly the counter of that. So it will be interesting to see how the space develops. And now we have a question from Peter, who speaks about identity management again. And he says that payment systems are in a way linked with identity. Are there self-sovereign identity frameworks to ensure open and trusted digital identity solutions for such payment systems leveraging on blockchain in Africa? Do you know of existing national and regional initiatives for decentralized identity in the continent? Would you like to take that question, Raman, or should I pose that to Blaise because he was referring to identity management?
Yeah, I think Blaise would probably be better suited for this, yeah.
Yeah. Blaise?
Just to comment, yes, I think there are self-sovereign identity management that exist, and there are protocols that some of them follow. I don't know if it is okay to mention some solutions, but Flex ID is a solution that I know, which is more like a self-sovereign ID, and they are building on some open source frameworks, as the questioner asked, which are like universal and allows for interoperability. So I'll say yes, there are some of these solutions that exist. Flex ID is something that is built on, for instance, the Algorand blockchain, and they are using some of these protocols for their work. But yes, the question is, there are these identities that exist. You can leverage them for identity management and integration. I don't know if that answered the question.
Thanks, Blaise. That's great because you provided an example as well. So I believe Flex ID is something that the concerned participant can look up and can further inform themselves about how sovereign digital IDs work. We have a question by Itan here who asks that, do you believe that blockchain and DLTs may bring credible solutions to financial inclusion? If so, which specific issues of financial exclusion could it answer? Are there specific regulations that facilitate this issue or companies that are focused on improving financial inclusion through blockchain?
Yeah, maybe let me kickstart this and others can chip in. So they facilitate identity management, and some of the areas that you're looking at is, for instance, is in crop insurance. So if you look at most African countries, farmers need crop insurance, but then the insurers are also not sure of how to track the crop yield and what is coming up from these farmers. So that's one area where if you with digital identity for DID, you're able to map it to each user with whatever solutions you provide. And over blockchain, you're able to track whatever the farmer is doing. And this information then makes it easy for you to trust which farmer, trust like the farmer, their user details, and where this is linked to, for instance, their company details. I think it makes it easy to provide financial services like crop insurance for the farmers. So that's one area. I think the question asked for an example that I think you can link DID to financial inclusion and services, and so that you can provide targeted services. You can also identify the financial profile or economic profile of the SMEs or the individuals, and then you can then determine which kind of services they need, whether it's in loan access or it is in crop insurance. These are some of the areas that I see DID that are leveraged on the blockchain to make this possible. And also there's inclusion, because then the SMEs can then look beyond local financial institutions to getting like support from external agencies. So a funder who is based in another country can look at the blockchain or look at this user profile, because they are through DID, and then trust them to provide them with the services that they need. So that also even brings about more inclusion and access to financing.
Thanks, Blaise. It really helps, especially when you link it up with the agricultural sector, because we noticed that quite a few questions here have also come about how to apply the blockchain for financial inclusion in agriculture, which I think is of most relevance to the African continent. So thanks for linking it up and showing how crop insurance helps with the case of digital identity for farmers, and then links back to how the blockchain facilitates it. So I think that we have answered a majority of the questions that have been posed in English. We do have a comment that does link back to safety and security, because Toussaint asks that a risk factor is that there are more than 1,500 crypto projects, and several crypto projects died just after being created. Policymakers, how can they trust handling such assets? So what would be your view? How can greater trust be built?
I mean, I can start. I think regulation is definitely a big problem. And, to even piggyback on the question from Ethan, we have to have a regulation that enable firm to raise capital through blockchain, right? I think in a lot of the European countries, we started having regulation that make it clearer how you can raise money via TLTs, right? How ICO are supposed to work. So we definitely need more regulation around the ways in which people can now raise money. And that will be the way in which you sort of regulate ICOs or regulate how people trade securities and the TLTs, right? So I think that's important in this specific case. Now, I think we actually have, if it's like a rule-based regulation, right? We have a bunch of framework in the existing world that could apply to crypto really. I think the challenge that I see sometimes coming from the regulators is they don't even maybe want to sort of consider using the same framework for crypto, while I think that regulation should be neutral. If something looks like a security, it should be regulated as a security, right? If a crypto project looks like foreign exchange, then it should be regulated at a minimum, like the way we regulate foreign exchange, unless we are able to show that it's not really foreign exchange and it's something else. So for me, I think the flip that has to happen is to take stock of how the existing regulation apply to certain crypto projects. If it's a security issuance, we know how we deal with security issuances. We have capital market authority in our countries, and we do that. If it's a token that looks like a currency, we regulate it the same way as we regulate currencies. And if it's something else, then we have to find, we have to make the regulation involved so that it can cover it. Because I think that's how we protect the people. It's by smart regulation. Because if we don't do that, people still go on crazy platforms and still buy this project. So there's no way from preventing that to happen. It's already happening. So it's almost like, the option for the authority and the regulator sort of offer like a safe harbor and clarity in terms of what can be done. So people at least are protected in that environment. So that would be my comment.
Thanks, Roman. And when it comes to like a final question here, I would like to end with a generic question that's come up, but is actually important, which is about what are sandboxes? Because a lot of people keep hearing the term, and we understand that it's sort of like a bridge from an experiment to actual regulation around technology, but there is still a lot of confusion in the minds of the audience around that. And I believe Blaise started with a slide talking about sandboxes and the fact that they're an exciting wake-up call. So if you could take that up, Blaise, and answer this question.
Mute. Sandboxes are like you would say a virtual or testing environment. I don't know how technical I should go, but they are usually more like you would say a development environment that allows you to play with the rules or what the actual event might be. So they allowed you to test in a playful way what it will look like to be on a real world environment. So, but to go in technical, sandboxes just like provide you with the tools and most of the rules that you need to know and the technical bits that you need to integrate with if you wanted to, let's say, work with the bank. And I'll go with an example. I don't know how technical I should go. So let's take, for instance, you wanted to build your app on a regional bank like EcoBank. EcoBank would say, you know what, we only accept apps that meet some minimum criteria. For instance, you should have maybe a payment service license. You should meet some Web3 standards. Your app should be PCI compliant. You should be able to have some regulations within your tech architecture. So they release all these rules into a development environment and say, you know what, come and build and test these things. Once you meet all these requirements, our tech team will review and say, this app is kind of compliant. They have ticked all the boxes. We've seen that, and then they can then migrate you to building on the real EcoBank platform because it's a financial institution and they want to minimize the risk. So they don't want to, in a case where they gamble with an application that comes in and there's so many bugs and it affects, hacking, financial, customer data being lost. So the banks want to be sure. So they provide you with this sandbox to say, come and play with it. And it's the same with the central banks. So you come and play with the sandbox, you integrate, test your app. Once you meet all the criteria, then you are moved on to becoming like a whitelisted application on the main system. And then you can be listed as they trust you, you've met all the regulatory requirements, and then you go live on their platform. But whilst on this sandbox, it's more like a test platform, and you are kind of like playing with the rules, making sure you check all the boxes. That's like a non-technical way, maybe with this example, but others feel free to chip in.
Thanks, Blaise. I think that gave a very good understanding of what the sandbox is. And it also shows us that the way ahead for Africa probably lies with testing technologies, using sandboxes, giving regulators comfort, and then moving on to the next step in the adoption of blockchain. Because formal finance institutions, as you pointed out, would always require the comfort of knowing that it is whitelisted, it is working, and it is giving comfort to their customers. So the only way to see more formal financial institutions entering the mix and for fintechs coming from the other side, also showing how the sandboxes are working and how the technology is actually viable, would lie in terms of experimentation, playing with technology and seeing what works for the continent. So I would now like to thank this great panel for having given the audience a lot of insights into different disruptive technologies, right from the perspective of formal financial institutions, going into CBDCs, and finally looking at how we can actually enter into capital raising for SMEs through exciting innovations like ICOs and IDOs. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Nishita. Thank you. Thank you so much for the panelists. In terms of concluding remark, well, it was so enlightening, this conversation. What I would just say is that we notice, the universe of blockchains is really infinite. There's so much that we cannot do justice to this topic in such a limited time. There's one of our major, work stream in making finance is about inclusive and alternative finance. I think under that work stream, we continue to explore this subject. That's to say that we are just at the beginning of this conversation. That certainly will continue in the coming the weeks and months ahead. The purpose of this session was actually really to educate the participants and expose them to some of these concepts. I think we have reached the objective, and we are very pleased with that. That was possible because we had such a group of excellent panelists, and I would like to thank them for their enlightening presentation. I also like to really extend our gratitude to the moderator. She was great. I don't know which word to use. I mean, a very good management of the sessions, the discussions, and that really was very helpful. And also the fact that she was really knowledgeable on the subject. Thank you so much, Nishita. Thank you, Blaise. Thank you, Maite. Thank you,
for the kind words.
I will not forget the interpreter that worked behind the scene, and it really helped to make sure that people can grab the most out of these conversations. Thank you so much as well. I'm missing the name, but there was an interpreter in the back, Kwame Nyanke. The webinar, I mean, we hosted about 185 participants at the point. The participants from different backgrounds, which also demonstrate the interest in this webinar. The panelists managed really to make a link with different sectors of activity like agriculture, SMEs, and other critical topics for the development on the continent. That was really excellent. What I could say is that we also managed, the panelists managed to answer some of the questions in the Q&A boxes. I think you followed them through and that you got feedback from to your questions. But what we'll do afterwards is that we will make available the recording and the presentations on our website. So the recordings and the presentation will be available within, I think, 72 minutes, as we said. And if possible, we'll also answer some of the questions and put the response on our website. I think on that, that's my final word. Maybe I would just invite the panelists really to fill in the survey that will pop up at the end of when they wind up and they leave the platform. Please fill in the survey because we value your feedbacks, as we said in the introduction. That really helps us to improve the quality of our experience going forward. Thank you so much for staying so long. We went overboard, but it was very interesting. And we look forward to having you on our platform in the future for other webinars that we will organize. On that, I will say goodbye to all of you. Have a good day and bye-bye.